He was on one knee. The velvet ring box lay open in his palm. 63 red roses rested against his arm. The woman he had chosen stood before him in a flowing white dress, smiling through happy tears. Everything had been planned down to the last detail. Nothing was supposed to go wrong. A suitcase wheel rolled softly across the sand. The sound was so small, yet it stopped everything. He turned, and the color drained from his face. 30 feet away stood the only woman he had spent 14 months trying to forget. Maya. She wore a cobalt blue maternity dress beneath a white coat. One hand held the handle of a silver suitcase. The other rested quietly over the unmistakable curve of her pregnant belly. Nobody moved. His fiancée looked from Maya to the roses to the open ring box, then back at him. The smile left her face and did not return. Maya did not cry, did not raise her voice, did not ask for anything. She reached into her coat, removed a carefully folded document, placed it on top of her suitcase. Then she looked directly into his eyes. "You signed this." A pause, deliberate, unhurried. "At least. That is what they wanted me to believe." He unfolded the paper. His signature stared back at him. Every stroke, every curve, flawless. There was only one problem. He had never seen that document in his life. If that signature was real, someone had stolen 14 months from both of them. And before the sun finished setting over that beach, one buried truth would collapse everything he believed about the woman he thought had chosen to disappear. The woman now carrying the child he never knew existed. To understand how a perfect proposal became the most devastating moment of 3 lives, we have to go back to the night Maya vanished. The document was 1 page. Jiho read it 3 times. Each passed slower than the last. It was a legal rejection letter, written on the official letterhead of Kang Group International, addressed to Maya, dated 14 months ago, the same week he had flown to Tokyo for the merger that had saved his company from collapse. The letter said, in precise formal language, that Kang Jiho wished to sever all personal ties, that any claims to his name, his assets, or his lineage would be legally contested, that she should not attempt further contact. His signature sat at the bottom, flawless, unmistakable. He had been in Tokyo when someone signed his name to this. Maya. Her name left his mouth differently than he intended. Not commanding, not cold. Something raw underneath it that he had not heard in his own voice in a very long time. She had already turned away. Maya. She stopped, did not face him, just stopped, one hand still resting against her stomach, the evening wind moving quietly through her hair. "I did not write that letter." Silence stretched between them like a held breath. "I know," she said. Those 2 words hit harder than anything she could have screamed. She knew. She had always known the letter was not from him. Then why had she still disappeared? Xiaoyan stepped beside him. Her voice came out carefully, each word chosen with the precision of someone holding themselves together through sheer discipline. "Jiho, tell me what is happening right now." He had no answer that would not destroy everything within the next 60 seconds. The silence that followed told her more than any explanation could. The photographer had long stopped shooting. Security stood motionless, waiting for an instruction nobody gave. The candles kept burning, as though the world had not just shifted beneath everyone's feet. Maya lifted her suitcase handle. "I did not come here to interrupt your evening." No bitterness, no theater, just the clean delivery of fact. "My doctor is at Manhattan General. This city is where I live now. I had no idea you would be standing on this beach. She began walking. Jiho crossed the distance in 4 steps and reached for her arm. She moved back before he made contact. Not dramatically. 1 small step. A boundary established without a single word, and somehow more final than any door he had ever heard close. "Do not," she said quietly. "I need to explain." "You had 14 months. She held his gaze without flinching. "Someone made certain you never could." Then she walked away. He stood holding a document he had never signed, watching the mother of his unborn child dissolve into the crowd along the boardwalk. Behind him, Seo-yeon slowly picked up the wristbox from the sand. She turned it once in her hands. Then she asked the question that would unravel every carefully constructed lie of the past 14 months. Ji-ho. How many months pregnant is she? 16 months before the beach. Kang Ji-ho did not know how to ask for help. The world never saw that. The world saw the black suit, the silence, the way a room reorganized itself the moment he entered. $4 billion had a way of making a man appear like he had every answer already. Maya had seen through it on a Tuesday. She was working late at the legal consultancy 3 floors below Kang Group's Manhattan offices. He had pressed the wrong elevator button. Just that. 1 wrong button in a 40-floor building. She was holding a coffee she could not afford, and reading a brief she had already memorized, and when the doors opened on her floor instead of the lobby, she simply looked up. "You look terrible for someone who owns the building." Nobody spoke to him like that. He rode back up with her anyway. They talked for 11 minutes, going nowhere, while his driver circled the block and his head of security called twice. He did not answer either call. 11 minutes with a woman who did not know his net worth and showed absolutely no interest in discovering it. He came back the following Tuesday, and the one after that. By the 4th Tuesday, she had stopped pretending to be surprised, and he had stopped pretending he was there for any reason other than her. What grew between them was not loud. It did not announce itself at dinner tables or announce itself in grand gestures. It lived in the small things, the way she remembered exactly how he took his coffee, the way he always positioned himself facing the door in every room they shared, and how she had once quietly asked why. He had told her the truth, which was something he almost never did with anyone. Old habit. I spent too many years in rooms where exits mattered more than entrances. She did not press him, did not offer pity or analysis, just gave the truth the breathing room it deserved. That was Maya. One evening in October, standing at his apartment window while the city burned gold 40 stories below, he said something he had never rehearsed. "If you ever cannot find me, look harder, because disappearing for you is not something I would choose." She turned from the window and studied him the way she always did, reading the sentence beneath the sentence. "That promise works both ways," she said. He nodded. Neither of them understood it was a contract. Neither knew that 2 floors below, inside an office that went dark every night at 9, someone had already begun making careful plans to ensure that promise would never survive the year. 3 weeks later, alone in her bathroom on a quiet Sunday morning, Maya stared at 2 lines on a white test strip. She pressed one hand flat against the cold tile wall, and she smiled. Fully, without reservation. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She let it ring. It rang again. She told herself it was nothing. That was the first mistake. Maya had discovered she was pregnant on a Sunday. By Wednesday, she had already decided how she would tell him. Not at dinner, not somewhere public with ambient noise and interruptions. She would cook. His apartment. Something simple. She would say the words clearly and watch his face without a table between them. She never got the chance. The private doctor she booked was on West 68th Street. No connection to Jiho's corporate insurance network. No shared records. She paid the deposit from her personal account because something instinctive told her this information belonged to her until she chose to share it. The appointment was for Monday at 10 a.m. Saturday morning, a text arrived canceling it. Scheduling conflict. Next available slot was 5 weeks away. She called twice. The receptionist was apologetic and immovable. 5 weeks felt strange. Not wrong, just strange. She rebooked and moved on. What she could not move on from was Jiho's assistant. Daniel Cho had always been the kind of man who made everything effortless. Parking validated, reservations confirmed, small courtesies extended without being asked. When Maya stopped by the Kang Group offices that Thursday to drop off a book Jiho had mentioned wanting, Daniel looked up from his desk, saw her face, and reached for his phone before she finished crossing the lobby. He turned slightly away. Spoke in Korean. Low. Fast. Then he set the phone down and smiled at her like the call had never happened. I will make sure he gets it. She thanked him, rode the elevator down, stood in the lobby for a moment before stepping outside. That call had not been casual. The body carries information the mind takes longer to process. Something in the angle of his shoulders, the deliberate lowering of his voice. Daniel had reported her arrival to someone. She spent Thursday evening constructing reasons why that was normal. Security protocol, office procedure. She almost convinced herself by midnight. Friday dismantled everything. The same black sedan sat outside her building at 7 a.m. when she left for work. She noted it without stopping. On Columbus Avenue 2 hours later, returning from a meeting, it was parked 40 feet from her office entrance. Different driver behind the wheel. Identical plates. She photographed both without breaking her stride. That evening, she resolved to tell Jiho everything. The pregnancy, Daniel, the car. All of it laid plainly on the table. He was busy. Tokyo call. 20 minutes. He returned to the restaurant warm and attentive and completely present. She opened her mouth twice. Twice something closed it. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow without interruption. Saturday morning, she took a cab across town to pick up dry cleaning. At the intersection of 57th and Park, she glanced through the window without intention and saw Jiho stepping out of a car outside the Meridian Hotel. He was not alone. The woman walking beside him wore white. Han So-yeon was not what Maya would have imagined. That was the uncomfortable truth sitting at the center of everything. She was not predatory, not calculating, not the kind of woman who collected other people's relationships as trophies. She was 31 years old, the only daughter of Han Investments chairman Byung-soo Han, and she had been quietly, genuinely falling for Kang Ji-ho since September. 2 months before Maya had ever noticed the black sedan, or the canceled appointment, or the deliberate silence of Daniel Cho. She had met Jiho at a charity dinner on the Upper East Side, seated beside him by arrangement, though she had not known that then. Her father had mentioned Jiho's name once before that evening, briefly, in the context of a business merger that would benefit both families considerably. She had not connected the conversation to the man beside her until much later. By then, it no longer felt like arrangement. Jiho had been distant at first, polite but absent in the way powerful men sometimes are when their mind is occupying a different room entirely. She had not chased his attention. She had simply talked about the one thing she genuinely loved: marine conservation, the work she funded quietly without press or announcement. And somewhere between the appetizer and the main course, something in him had shifted. He had leaned forward. That was how it began. What Seoyeon did not know, could not know, was that Jiho had been fractured before he sat beside her. That the woman responsible for the only real softness he had allowed himself in years had stopped returning his calls 3 weeks prior. That he had been told by a man he trusted completely that Maya had accepted a settlement and relocated to London was someone she had apparently been seeing throughout their relationship. He had not believed it immediately, but grief and betrayal are patient architects. Given enough silence, they build walls that look exactly like healing. Seoyeon knew none of this. She knew only what she experienced. A man who was guarded, but genuine, who called when he said he would, who listened with the kind of attention most people reserve for problems they are paid to solve. She was not performing love. She was simply falling into it without knowing the ground beneath her had been prepared by someone else entirely. The evening of the Meridian Hotel was a business dinner. 12 executives from the Seoul office. She had attended at Jiho's invitation, arrived in white because it was her instinct, not a statement, and left at 9 p.m. without drama. What she did not see, because she had no reason to look, was a cab slowing at the intersection of 57th and Park. A window. A face. A woman whose name she had never heard. 3 days later, Seoyeon's phone rang. Private number. The voice was male. Unhurried. Certain of itself in the way this people are when they hold information others desperately need. Miss Han, there is something about Jiho you do not know. She said nothing. He has a situation developing. If it surfaces publicly before the merger closes, your father loses everything he has built with the Kang family. I need you to understand what is at stake. A pause. The woman is pregnant. She did not leave because she was weak. That matters. That is the thing history would get wrong about Maya Okafor, and the thing she would spend the next 5 months refusing to let define her. She left because they gave her no other architecture for survival. It began on a Tuesday, 11 days after the Meridian Hotel. She had not yet confronted Jiho, had not yet decided how to frame what she saw, because the reasonable explanations she had constructed were still standing, barely, and she was 4 months pregnant and needed them to hold a little longer. A woman was waiting inside her apartment building lobby. Not outside. Inside, late 50s, impeccable in the way that old money always is. Silver hair cut close. A single strand of pearls. She sat in the lobby chair with the stillness of someone who had learned long ago that power does not pace. She introduced herself as Chairman Wu's personal counsel. Maya recognized the name. Jiho had mentioned Chairman Wu perhaps 3 times, always briefly, always with the particular compression in his jaw that meant the subject was not open. The woman opened a leather folio across her knees, laid out 3 documents in sequence, patient, unhurried, the practiced choreography of someone who had done this before. The first document was a financial transfer, Maya's name on the receiving account, $300,000. Dated 6 days ago. Maya had received no such transfer. The woman let her read it twice before moving to the second document. A signed statement from 2 witnesses confirming they had seen Maya leaving Jiho's office with confidential merger files. The merger. The Tokyo deal that had held the entire Kang empire together. The third document was the rejection letter. His signature, his letterhead. These will be filed publicly Monday morning, the woman said. The transfer positions you as a corporate spy who was paid, then rejected romantically when the chairman discovered the relationship. The merger collapses. 300 employees lose their positions. She closed the folio. Or you take the actual transfer, which has already been prepared, and you relocate. Quietly. Permanently. Maya stared at the lobby floor. He does not know you are here, she said. It was not a question. The woman's expression did not change. He will know whatever we decide he needs to know. I am carrying his child. Yes. A pause that contained no warmth at all. That is precisely why we are having this conversation today instead of next week. Maya understood then, not just what they wanted, what they were capable of. The canceled appointment, the surveillance car, Daniel's phone call. This had been constructed over weeks, methodically. She had never been paranoid. She had simply been slow to understand the scale of it. That night, she packed one suitcase. Before she left, she wrote Jiho a message. 7 sentences. The truth, plain and complete. She pressed send. 3 floors away, in an office that went dark every night at 9, a phone intercepted the message before it ever reached him. Deleted. Permanently. She was already in a cab to JFK when his phone showed nothing but silence. For 4 days, Jiho did not report her missing. That requires explanation, not defense. Explanation. He had tried calling 17 times across the first 48 hours. Each attempt reached voicemail. Her apartment showed no signs of forced exit. Her colleagues confirmed she had submitted a formal resignation by email Monday morning. Professional, complete, giving 2 weeks' notice she never intended to serve. Her lease was terminated through proper channels. Forwarding address listed as private. Everything pointed toward a decision, not a disappearance. He sent his head of security anyway. A man named Park, who had worked for the Kang family for 11 years, and who reported back on the 3rd day, was a single manila envelope and an expression Jiho had never seen on him before. Reluctance. The envelope contained photographs. Maya at JFK, departing International Terminal, a timestamp, a gate number. Beside her, close enough to suggest familiarity, a man Jiho did not recognize carrying her carry-on bag. A second photograph taken at the check-in counter. Her expression in that image was the one that stayed with him. Not distressed, not looking backward. Composed. Park set a second document beside the photographs without speaking. A bank record. $300,000 deposited into an account registered to Maya 4 days before she left. The transfer originated from a shell company with no visible connection to anyone Jiho could immediately identify. He sat with those documents for a long time. The mind under sufficient pain will reach for the explanation that allows survival over the explanation that demands more suffering. He did not want to believe it. He turned it over, looked for the exit. There was none that did not require a level of orchestration he could not yet imagine anyone in his life capable of. She had taken money. She had left with someone. She had not looked back. He put the photographs in the envelope. He put the envelope in a drawer. He never opened that drawer again. What happened to him after was not dramatic. It was quieter and therefore worse. He worked 18-hour days. He closed the Tokyo merger. He answered every email. He returned every call. The empire his family had built across 3 generations became the only thing he allowed himself to inhabit fully. Seo Yuan appeared in that landscape like a frequency he had almost forgotten existed. Warm, consistent, making no demands he could not meet. He told himself he was healing. He was constructing distance and calling it recovery. 6 weeks after Maya vanished, Jiho sat in a board meeting on the 40th floor when his phone vibrated once beneath the table. Unknown number, single image attached, no message. He opened it under the table while the CFO spoke. Maya, standing outside what appeared to be a medical building, visibly pregnant. The timestamp at the corner read 4 days ago. His blood went completely cold. Park appeared in the doorway of the conference room 30 seconds later. Someone had sent them both the same photograph at the same moment. Now you understand what that beach actually was. Not a proposal interrupted by coincidence. Not two strangers colliding by accident on the wrong stretch of sand at the wrong hour. A collision 6 months in the making. Go back to it now. Watch it differently. Jiho had been on one knee for approximately 40 seconds when the suitcase wheel crossed from the boardwalk onto the sand. In those 40 seconds, he'd been present in a way he had not managed since the drawer he never opened. Seo-yeon's face had done something to the locked architecture inside his chest. Given it air. He had believed in those 40 seconds that choosing forward was the same as choosing well. Then the sound. He turned not from suspicion, but from something older than thought. A reflex belonging to a man who had spent years reading rooms for danger before danger announced itself. Maya was not danger. Maya was the thing he had spent 6 months constructing an entire emotional fortress to contain. Standing 30 feet away in a cobalt blue dress, with her hand resting against a stomach that answered every question he had stopped allowing himself to ask. The velvet box was still open in his palm. He closed it, not dramatically. The quiet closing of a man understanding that whatever this moment was, it was not what he had planned. Seo-yeon saw the gesture. Her breath changed. He crossed half the distance to Maya, before realizing she had not moved toward him. Had not moved at all. She stood with the particular stillness of someone who had rehearsed this moment, and then decided rehearsal was not necessary. He stopped 6 feet away, close enough to see that her eyes were clear. No tears prepared. No speech loaded and ready. Just a woman who had carried something enormous for 6 months and had long since made peace with the weight of it. "You were pregnant," he said. "When you left. You were already pregnant." She did not flinch at the word left. 12 weeks, she said. "When they came to my lobby. When they put 3 documents on the table and explained what would happen to your merger and your employees if I stayed." The merger. Tokyo. The deal that had consumed the entire autumn. Something cold moved through him. "Who came to you?" A woman. Pearl necklace. She said she represented Chairman Wu. Every muscle in Jiho's face went perfectly still. Behind him, Seo-yeon had not moved from where she stood. But her voice, when it came, was not the voice of a woman falling apart. It was quieter than that. More precise. "Jiho." He turned. She was holding the ring box he had dropped. Her expression contained something he had never seen in her before. Not heartbreak, not accusation, recognition. As though a conversation she had replayed privately for weeks had just found its final piece. "My father knows Chairman Wu," she said carefully. "They have known each other for 11 years. The beach went completely silent. Then her voice dropped to almost nothing. "Tell me he had nothing to do with this." Seo-yeon's father answered on the second ring. That was the first thing Jiho noted. Not the third ring or the fourth. The second. as though the phone had been sitting face up on a surface, watched, waiting for a specific number to appear. Jiho did not speak immediately. Let the silence work. Jiho! Chairman Han's voice carried the particular warmth of a man who had rehearsed casual. Is everything all right? So-yeon said you were planning something special this eve. Tell me about your relationship with Woo Sung-jin. A pause. Brief. Surgical. We sit on a charitable board together. Have for years. Why? Jiho looked at Maya, standing 6 feet away. She had said nothing since Seo-yeon's revelation. Had not needed to. Her expression held the specific patience of a woman who had already assembled this puzzle and was now simply watching someone else find the pieces. When did you last speak with him? Jiho, what is this about? He ended the call. The photographer had packed his equipment and left. Security had created a perimeter without being instructed to. The candles kept burning against the wind, indifferent. Jiho held out his hand toward Maya. May I see the document? She considered him for a moment, then reached into her coat and placed it in his palm. He read it with the focused attention of a man who had spent 15 years reviewing contracts that concealed their damage in language rather than omission. 3 paragraphs. Formal, precise. His letterhead, the version updated in September, the month he had redesigned the company branding ahead of the Tokyo announcement. His signature at the bottom. He read it twice. Then he took out his phone and opened the photograph he had kept locked in a private folder for 6 months. The one Park had shown him the morning after Maya left. A separate document. A resignation acknowledgement he had apparently signed accepting her formal exit from a consulting role she had never officially held. Same signature, both documents. He placed the 2 images side by side. Seo-yeon stepped closer and studied both without touching them. They are identical, she said quietly. Not similar. Identical. Which was the problem? No human being signs their name with perfect replication. Natural signatures carry microscopic variations in pressure, angle, termination. These 2 contained none, every stroke a mirror of the other. These were not forged, Jiho said. These were printed. Maya's expression shifted slightly. Someone had your digital signature, she said. 3 people have access to that file. His voice had dropped to something very quiet and very dangerous. My personal attorney, my head of operations. He stopped. And Chairman Woo's office. We exchanged digitally authenticated contracts during the merger preparation. The wave came in and pulled back across the sand. Seo-yeon set the ring box down on top of Maya's suitcase with extraordinary care. Then she looked at Jiho with an expression that closed a door permanently. My father introduced you to Woo Sung-jin, she said. 14 months ago, before you even met me, Park had worked for the Kang family for 11 years. Jiho had paid for his daughter's surgery, had attended his mother's funeral, had promoted him 3 times based on loyalty over qualification because some things matter more than a resume. He had trusted Park with information he withheld from his own attorneys. That history made what came next considerably worse. Jiho called him from the beach. 4 words. Find me Woo's files. Park arrived 22 minutes later, not to the beach. Jiho had moved everyone to the private room at the Meridian Hotel, the same hotel that had meant nothing and now meant everything. Maya sat across from Seo-yeon at a table where neither woman looked at the other, and both understood more than they were saying. Park entered and stopped when he saw Maya. Something crossed his face in the space between one heartbeat and the next. There and gone. The particular flinch of a man encountering a problem he believed had been permanently relocated. Jiho saw it. He had spent 15 years reading rooms. Sit down, Park. Sir, I have the files you. Sit down. Park sat. Jiho placed the two documents on the table between them. The rejection letter. The resignation acknowledgement. Then he set his phone beside them, opened to the digital signature file, the transfer record, and a single additional document he had accessed from his private server during the drive over. An internal security log. Access records for his digital signature file across the past 8 months. 3 names appeared. His attorney, his operations director, and Park Sung-woo. Accessed 4 times across 6 weeks. The last access dated the morning Maya had received the lobby visit from the pearl necklace woman. The room became very quiet. He needed someone inside, Jiho said. Woo is connected to my father's generation. He has no access to my current systems, my current security architecture, my current signature protocols. He needed a person already inside the house. Park stared at the log for a long time. When he spoke, his voice carried the exhausted quality of a man setting down something enormously heavy. My daughter's surgery cost $400,000. He did not look up. You covered 300. Woo Sung-jin covered the rest. 2 years before any of this. Before you, before Maya, before any of it. A long breath. By the time he asked me for anything, I had been grateful for so long I had forgotten gratitude could be weaponized. Maya was watching him with an expression Jiho could not read. The surveillance car, she said quietly. The canceled appointment. That was you. Park said nothing, which was its own answer. Seo-yeon stood slowly from the table, crossed to the window, pressed 2 fingers against the glass, and stared at the city below with the expression of someone redesigning everything they thought they knew about their own life. Then her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her father. Calling for the 3rd time in 20 minutes. She turned to Jiho with something new and resolved in her face. I want to know everything, she said, starting with what my father was protecting when he had her removed. Chairman Han arrived at the Meridian at 9:47 p.m. Nobody had invited him. That was the first indication of how severely he had miscalculated the evening. Men who control situations do not appear uninvited. They summon. The fact that Byung-soo Han walked through that door carrying his phone and his composure, and nothing else, meant he had spent the drive over deciding that controlling this room in person was safer than controlling it from a distance. He stopped when he saw Maya. Not shock, calculation. The rapid, practiced assessment of a man measuring how much had already been said against how much could still be managed. Jiho. Warm, steady. I think there has been a serious misunderstanding tonight. Sit down, Seo-yeon said. Her father turned to her with an expression that expected deference and found something else entirely. She was standing at the window with her arms folded and her eyes carrying the particular clarity that arrives after a long, expensive illusion finally breaks. He sat. Jiho did not speak immediately. He had learned long ago that silence applied with intention extracts more truth than any question. He let it fill the room until Chairman Han's composure developed its first visible fracture. The Tokyo merger, Jiho said finally. Walk me through what you and Woo Sung-jin needed it to accomplish. A careful breath. It was a sound business decision for both families. It restructured my inheritance clause. Jiho's voice carried no heat. Cold was more effective. A provision buried in the merger agreement. Page 41. I signed it without understanding that it transferred controlling interest to a joint board if I produced a biological heir outside of a board-approved marriage. He paused. You wrote that clause. Your attorney drafted it. The room absorbed this. Maya had not moved from her chair. Her hand rested against her stomach with the unconscious protectiveness that had been there since the beach, and she watched Chairman Han with the focused attention of a woman who had waited 6 months for this specific moment. My child, she said quietly, was the threat, not me. Han said nothing. A mixed-race heir with no approved marriage would have fractured your entire arrangement. Something in her voice was almost clinical, almost. So I had to disappear before I became undeniable. I protected this family, Han said. The warmth had evaporated. What remained was older and less attractive. Everything I did was to protect the continuity of what Jiho's father built across 40 years. You protected a clause, Jiho said. Seo-yeon placed her phone on the table. Face up. A recorded voice memo running for the last 11 minutes. Her father stared at it. I loved him, she said simply. You made that into a transaction without telling me. She stopped the recording. Saved it. I will not protect that. Jiho stood. He had made the decision somewhere between page 41 and this moment. Not between Maya and Seo-yeon. That framing had always been wrong. The real choice was between the version of himself that signed documents without reading them and the version that owed a woman the full weight of truth. He buttoned his jacket. Where are you going? Park said. The Kang Foundation dinner is still running. 400 people. Every major investor, board member, and media contact I have. He picked up his phone. My father spent 40 years building a reputation on the premise that the Kang name means integrity. He looked at Maya. I would like to find out if that was ever actually true. Maya held his gaze. Then she said the sentence she had carried across 6 months and several thousand miles. I did not come back for you. My child deserves the truth. Whatever you do with that is your decision. He nodded once. Then he walked out. The Kang Foundation dinner occupied the entire 42nd floor. 412 people. Round tables dressed in white linen. The kind of room where reputations were constructed and unmade with equal efficiency, where the currency was not money, but the confidence that money produces in people who have always had enough of it. Jiho entered through the main doors at 10:14 p.m. The room noticed immediately, not because he was late, because he was alone. Every previous foundation dinner had positioned him within the careful geometry of approved company. Tonight, he crossed the floor without greeting anyone, without the practiced handshake and the considered pause that powerful men use to signal they are accessible on their own terms. He walked directly to the podium. The room organizer moved to intercept him. One look stopped her completely. He adjusted the microphone. The room quieted with the instinctive attention of people who understand that something unscheduled is the only thing worth watching. My father built this foundation on a single principle, Jiho began. His voice carried without effort. Calm in the way that deep water is calm, with enormous pressure underneath. He believed that how a man conducts himself when it costs him something is the only honest measure of his character. Everything else is performance. He looked across 400 faces. Tonight, I have the opportunity to find out whether I am actually his son. He laid 3 documents on the podium, the rejection letter, the access log, the merger clause from page 41. He named Woo Sung-jin. He named the forged digital signature. He named the lobby visit and the $300,000 fabricated transfer. He named the surveillance, the canceled appointment, the intercepted message. He named every mechanism by which a woman carrying his child had been systematically dismantled and removed from his life to protect a contractual clause buried in a merger agreement. He spoke for 9 minutes without notes. The room did not make a sound. When he finished, he stepped back from the podium. A board member in the third row stood and left without speaking. 2 investors followed. Then 4 more. The exits did not become a stampede. It was quieter and therefore more absolute. The measured departure of people recalibrating risk. Woo Sung-jin had been seated at the head table. His chair was empty. Had been since the 7th minute. Ji-ho stood at the podium until the room had reorganized itself into whatever it was going to become without him managing it. Then he took out his phone and called Maya. 4 rings. 5. A voice answered. Female, unfamiliar. Professional in the particular way that medical staff are professional when delivering information they have delivered before. Mr. Kang? Miss Okafor asked us to contact you. She was admitted to Manhattan General 40 minutes ago. His hand tightened on the phone. She is in labor, the voice continued. There is a complication. A pause that lasted approximately 1 second and felt considerably longer. You should come now. He ran 4 blocks. The car was faster. He knew that. He ran anyway because movement was the only available answer to the specific terror of a phone call that ends before you have asked everything you needed to ask. Manhattan General received him at 10:58 p.m. A nurse directed him to the 4th floor without requiring explanation. Someone had left his name at the desk. He did not know when Maya had done that, or what it had cost her to decide to. He sat in a corridor that smelled of recycled air and institutional quiet, and he waited in the particular way that powerful men are never required to wait for anything, with no leverage available, no decision to make, nothing to negotiate or accelerate or control. He simply sat. At 1:17 a.m., a doctor appeared. She is stable. The words landed before Ji-ho fully processed the doctor's face. The placenta had partially separated. We moved quickly. She handled it with more composure than most people manage in far simpler circumstances. Ji-ho absorbed this. The baby. A girl. A pause that contained something warm. 4 pounds, 14 ounces. She arrived early, but she arrived fighting. She is in the NICU as a precaution. You can see her. He stood at the nursery glass for a long time. She was smaller than he had prepared himself for. A daughter he had not known existed 6 hours ago, wrapped in a white blanket under warm light, her face carrying the concentrated expression of someone who had just completed something enormously difficult and intended to rest thoroughly before doing anything else. He pressed one hand flat against the glass. Not a CEO, not a mafia boss, not the heir to 40 years of a calculated empire. Just a man on the wrong side of a window from his child, understanding for the first time what all the architecture of power actually costs when it is the only thing you have built. Maya's room was on the same floor. He did not go in. He stood at the open doorway. She was awake. She looked at him with the clear, exhausted eyes of a woman who had survived the longest night of her life and was not yet ready to assign it meaning. She is extraordinary, he said. Maya said nothing for a moment. She is? Quietly, without performance, a mother stating a fact. "I am not asking for anything tonight," Jiho said. "I want you to know that." She studied him with the same reading expression he had fallen in love with in an elevator 16 months ago. "Come back tomorrow," she said finally. "We will figure out what tomorrow looks like." He nodded. That was enough. It was not forgiveness. It was not a beginning. It was a door left open by a woman who had every reason to close it permanently, and it was more than he deserved and exactly what he needed. He walked back to the nursery. He stood there until the sky outside the hospital window began its slow transition from black to the particular gray that comes before dawn commits to anything. His phone vibrated. Unknown number. No caller identification. A single text message that appeared and simply stayed there on the screen, requiring nothing but being read. "You exposed Woo Sung-jin tonight. You found the child. You believe this is over." He stared at the message. There is one question nobody in that room thought to ask. Why did Woo Sung-jin need your heir eliminated specifically? Not delayed, not managed, eliminated. A second message arrived before he could respond. Ask Park what he found in the merger files from 2019, the ones that were supposed to have been destroyed. Then the number went dead. Jiho looked through the nursery glass at his daughter sleeping in the early light. She had been in the world for less than 3 hours. Someone was already afraid of her.